Hi, my name is Steve Blank, and I'm the editor and publisher of Blank Slate Media. And I'd like to welcome everyone to our sit down with Jennifer DeSena, the town supervisor of North Hempstead, who is running for re-election against former town supervisor John Kamen. This is part of a series of interviews with candidates running for office this November. And I would like to thank in advance the sponsor of this event and others, Northwell Health. So let's start right in. So can you tell me the most important issues that you see for the town of North Hempstead right now?
Most important to me is that we use the taxpayers' dollars responsibly, that we manage carefully, that we don't overtax them, and that we provide the services that the residents need. As you know, that includes a building department that functions reasonably. And I want to improve our infrastructure. I want to make sure that our parks are beautiful and safe, and that they are a pleasure for all our families to enjoy. And, everybody wants their roads to be safe. So my priority is that we give those basics to our residents at the lowest cost possible.
Okay. So let's speak about the building department, because that has been an issue for many years. The building department, I think right now, and I think we're at a recent event, and you mentioned we're still in terms of the speed in which permits are approved continue to be an issue. And this has been a issue for businesses in particular. It affects residents, it affects businesses, but businesses in particular that are trying to open up. They make investments, they can't open, they're paying rent, they've done construction, and they don't do it. So you've been, now you're getting close to 2 years. Shouldn't that problem have been resolved?
Not a day goes by that I don't hear another complaint about the building department, about something that seems unreasonable, something that people should be able to get a simple answer, and they ask a question and they're not able to get an answer. So I have asked for the Nassau County Controller to audit the operations of the building department, and that audit has been underway for over a year now. There's a lot for them to look at, obviously.
Have you got an indication when they're going to do that?
I don't. It's not my audit. It's the county's audit, and I'm not directing it. I know that at one point they were having trouble getting information, so I'm letting them proceed as they see. Obviously, I would have liked it to have gone quicker, but it's not my audit. It's the county's audit. So I believe there need to be some changes in the building department. And I have not been able to make changes in staff that requires a vote of the majority of the board, which I do not have the support of. So I believe that with the audit and the questions being asked, there has been some improvement in the service. And I would like there to be more improvement.
Have you made proposals for personnel that have been turned down by the Democratic majority on the council?
No.
Let me ask you that you were running 2 years ago against Wayne Wink. This was, both of you, I think, were discussing this as being perhaps one of the biggest issues for the town. Wouldn't that, given that was an issue and you had a time to address it or at least know about it, shouldn't the progress have been sooner? It's been 2 years. Why ask for an audit? You are there running as the town supervisor, you are the top executive in the town. Shouldn't you be able to have learned on your own what goes on and perhaps look at other jurisdictions which have made improvements?
I have looked at other jurisdictions, and I have made suggestions within the building department about changes. They have not been received completely, and without the support of the board, I can't make those changes on my own.
Okay. What sort of things have you proposed that the board has not agreed to?
Well, as I said before, they were not changed. They were not proposals made to the board. They were within the building department.
Okay, but you say that the town board would need to be on board with this. Have you proposed it to them and said, these are things that I see need to change. Will you back me on this?
I have not gotten to the point with the town board.
Okay. Housing has been an issue. It was a major issue, and you were among the town supervisors, also Hempstead, Oyster Bay, that had opposed two plans by Governor Hochul, one with the accessory dwelling units, and the second one where she called on reaching certain metrics for improvements for increasing housing. I think at the time you said that it would be that locally was the local officials knew better than the state in terms of what the needs were, and it should be left to the local leaders. So do you have you made any proposals?
Well, we hear proposals. I stand by those words that we should make these decisions at the local level. If we allowed accessory units everywhere at the same time, that could cause problems in some areas where there's not enough parking, or there's not enough water, or there's not sewerage. If we allowed multifamily housing to be built in many places at the same time, we might not have the required parking, water, sewage, electricity. So I still maintain that the local officials can do this best, and we do it because we build consensus with the community. We have a give and take where the community becomes aware of an application, and they can come in and be heard, and they maybe will request a traffic study, or the applicant yet generally requests a traffic study and maybe some environmental studies. But that is the best way to build, is when we have consensus in the community and we make sure that we have the resources in that area.
Have you reached out to, have you proposed any zoning changes or any proposals that would increase, that would lead to development in the town? Right now, I mean, the reason that the governor had done that and cited this, and this is a national problem, but there's a lack of housing, and the lack of housing generally. The governor has identified the fact that there's a shortage of 800,000 housing units.
In the whole state?
In the state, that is correct.
Right.
And that her proposals were based on addressing that. But it drives up the cost of homes here. It makes it difficult for young people to buy homes in North Hempstead or in Nassau County. For seniors looking to downsize, there's difficulty. So there's an urgency to this. It also helps drive up rent, and there's a lack of affordable housing for young people here, also for rental units. is that, have you made any proposals to address that?
Well, I have to start by saying not every space in New York State is equally suited for building. And one very massive difference is our water supply. Long Island lives over our drinking water, and we are using more water than we have right now already. So to say that we should just build here on Long Island, it's you have to look at the water. New York City has reservoirs, upstate they have reservoirs, they have other sources. We have to look at the reality of where we live. So of course, I'm sympathetic to young people wanting to find affordable housing. I have, two young adult sons myself, and I would love for them to find affordable housing. But we have to choose the places carefully. So what I would propose is updating our master plan. North Hempstead hasn't updated its master plan for 30 years. And part of that process is having community hearings and analyzing the space and identifying the places that would be well suited for building different types of housing stock. And then we can move forward together and consider zoning changes for those areas after we've identified them.
Do you think that there's a responsibility in Nassau County, which the population of Nassau County is basically the same since 1950, and the number of the housing units that have built, Nassau County is last in new housing among counties. Do you think there's a responsibility, or do you think that because of the water situation, there is just, this is not a place where you can add housing units and more people?
Well, Nassau County is a very dense county. We have a lot of people already, so it might not be the best place for new housing. There could be repurposing that would be good in Nassau County. But I know there is building going on in Nassau County. It has to be done, by consensus. It's the problem with the governor's approaches were that they were one size fits all, and you could have too much at the same time.
Okay, but do you have any, you're saying the master plan, when would you do this study and how long would it take?
It is likely to take a year or a little more. It depends, but it could be a year to a year and a half.
And has anything thus far been initiated? Is this something that you're planning on down the road if reelected?
It's something I'd like to do very soon.
Okay. One of the areas, and this was part of the governor's second plan, was transit-oriented housing. And this was something that was also rejected. Architects and developers say that is really important for downtown business districts. That is the way that districts are being supported in the new economy with Amazon and things like that. Do you think that there should be transit-oriented? This seems to be objected to, the idea of it. And I guess the question would be, where else would you build it? And the idea is that you'd build up. You'd have denser housing, the way they've done it actually in the village of Mineola has done.
That's what I was just going to say. This is happening. They have built very nice apartments in Mineola and in Westbury.
But what about the other places in the town? It's also seen as by architects, by developers, as important for supporting downtown business districts, which in some cases have been hurting. Would you support efforts to rezone to permit multifamily housing near the Long Island Railroad train stations throughout the town.
Again, I don't think every Long Island Railroad station is the same. So I would not like to take that blanket approach that every train station area should be rezoned. There are some areas where I think it's appropriate. And I know of at least one developer who has a plan in mind. And it is near a train station, and it probably will be it probably will be very attractive, but it's something that we will listen to the community. We will have a hearing about it, and we will get there with consensus from the community.
But let me ask you this. Are you talking about rezoning an entire area? Because the one thing that I've heard, we've done town halls and we've spoken to developers. And the one thing they said is they don't want to do this. Developers are not looking to come in and get variances on zoning, because that adds to the time and expense for getting a project done. What they'd like to see is whole areas rezoned to permit that, the way they did actually in Mineola, so that they would know I can go in, and if I get this property, I'm able to do this. Is that something that you would contemplate, that you would be in favor of?
I think that's something we could consider after doing a master plan. After updating the master plan, we might be able to identify places that we could rezone in advance.
Okay. One of the things that's happened, we're now in the budget season, and I guess you've got till tomorrow, I think, to submit your revised budget.
Our tentative budget.
Tentative budget.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. But in the midst of this, you had the controller resign with no notice, and there's been a couple of deputies who also resigned fairly recently. What happened there? Why are people, it seems odd that somebody in a position of controller would come in, and I understand their personnel issues, but is there a issue with how the town is being run, including you, but you also have the board with that? Are things not being run well? Are we chasing our important employees, staffers, being chased away?
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, we will be able to prepare this budget. We did it last year without a controller, and we'll do it again, without that controller spot being filled. And my deputy, my director of finance has been named the acting controller, and he will assist in the same way he did last year. But I'll tell you what happened with our controller is that she was being directed by the town board majority and their staff. You know that there's town board majority staff since I became the supervisor. And our controller was asked to change her opinion on whether we should use a certain investment company. And she was invited to a meeting with Veronica Lurvy and Adam Haber and Mitch Picnic, and they asked her to use this firm to get us better returns on our money. She said that she didn't think that was a good choice. But after that, she was requested over and over to change her opinion. And she was told that if she didn't change her opinion, that the council member would say that she was still reconsidering her opinion. So she was very upset.
She was very upset?
Yeah, she was very upset because she had given her opinion, and she was told to change her opinion. And she was also told that what is said with the town board staff must be kept confidential from the supervisor, which is incorrect because the controller reports to the supervisor. So she felt that she was unable to work in this environment. And, she was being set up, asked to come to meetings with a council person, and then the council person wasn't there. It would just be the town board majority staff directing her what to do. So she did not feel that that was a safe environment, and that is why she left, unfortunately.
What was the company that was that they were recommending that the town?
Yeah, it was New York Class, which is, they're used by many municipalities, but in our case, it was not going to result. It was the controller's opinion that it was not going to result in a better return.
New York Class.
Yes.
CLASS.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And there were two deputies that resigned, and actually the director of purchasing. Was that were there similar incidents that that caused those two to leave as well? Or those
no, I don't think that those were similar. I mean, the deputy controller, one of the deputy controllers had left because she had been doing a lot of work in the absence of the controller. And it took so long for us to hire a controller that it seemed that she was frustrated that it took so long, and she was being asked to do extra work. And that is why that deputy controller resigned.
So, and there were efforts to get the controller. So is this set up right now with the 4 Democrats and the 3 Republicans, including yourself? Is the town of North Hempstead dysfunctional at this point in terms of running basic operations?
When we have commissioners being told that they must report on a daily basis to the town board staff, yes, that is a problem, because everyone knows that you have to have a chain of command. And the supervisor is the chief administrative officer and the chief budget officer. So for the day-to-day operations, the commissioners report to the supervisor. Board members can only act when they're voting as a board. Now they can ask questions of commissioners, and they're always free to do that, to ask for information. But when they have their own chief of staff who is also directing their operations, that presents a conflict. And some of the commissioners are able to work around it. In the case of the controller, she did not feel that she could continue under those circumstances.
This seems to be, I mean, many people, I think, particularly when you took office, and maybe when Laura Gillen took office in the town of Hempstead, were kind of unaware of how town government under state law operates, right, where really you can have a Republican elected to be town supervisor, but it's the majority on the town council that actually is the final word on a lot of decisions. Is this just an inherent problem when you have a supervisor of one party and a majority on the council of another party?
See, I don't think the politics should matter. We're not talking about big social issues. We're talking about safe roads and safe parks and, garbage and snow. So I don't see why there have to be political decisions at all. But the town board, the Democratic majority, they meet as a group, and they call it a political caucus, and they don't let me come. Now they could, because, and by the way, political caucus is an exception to the New York State open meeting law, because normally a quorum can't meet unless it's open to the public. It's got to be noticed. But they use an exception called a political caucus. Now, I could still attend because I am a registered Democrat. And if I were able to attend, we would be able to talk about issues that are before us. But they don't let me attend, and they make their decisions privately. They obviously they talk about how they're going to vote, because they usually vote as a block. They either all vote yes, or they all abstain, or they all vote no. But I am not privy to these decisions. And so what I have proposed is that we have open meetings. All we have to do, I mean, look at this technology we have. All we'd have to do is have it open by Zoom so the public could watch, and we could have our meetings and talk about business. But it is not a political caucus when you're calling in commissioners during the day and requiring them to attend and conducting town business. That is not a political, I mean, that is not a political caucus anymore. And so it should not be happening. And I have been trying, my whole term to eliminate that practice. And, in the past, this is how the town board has operated under prior supervisors, but the supervisor was in the majority. They had 5 or 6 in the same party. And so, for the one Republican, they would, just take the information separately. But this is not serving the public well when the supervisor is not allowed to meet with the other members of the board.
Now, in terms of taxes, there has been, at least in mail, we're getting these mailers. They're frequent from the New York State Republican Committee, and they are criticizing John Kamen for having, and I think this came up at the meet and greet at the Lakeville Civic, that in the 10 years that John Kamen was supervisor, that taxes had gone up 44%. He says that his response was that North Hempstead's taxes was that they were within the state cap all the years, with the exception of one, when the council exceeded the tax cap, and he opposed it, and that North Hempstead's taxes are still lower than Hempstead and Oyster Bay. Is this, what's your feeling? I know this year there was a decrease in taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Was this irresponsible in terms of where the taxes are now in the town of North Hempstead, that they were raised too much under John Kamen?
Taxes have gone up every year in the town of North Hempstead for a while, through Supervisor Botsworth's administration and Supervisor Kamen's. Some people say.
Let me ask you this: Isn't
Okay.
that true of almost every village, school district? Virtually every village and school district has the same thing, that they increase it under the tax cap. So isn't that kind of normal for what governments are doing throughout the state?
I think people want tax relief. I think that these days the price of food has gone up. We still have a lot of families going to food pantries every week. I visited 3 this week, and they are feeding hundreds of families. And we have an aging population in North Hempstead, and many are seniors on a fixed income. So I don't think it's right to just raise taxes, about 2% because we can, and because people weren't paying attention. We had reserves that were 4 times what we needed. We have a rule for how much reserves we should have. The ratings agencies also have guidelines for what they would like to see, and we had even more than that. So I don't think that it's right to raise taxes just because nobody's complaining about it. I think that we should only tax what we need, and where we had excess reserves, I returned them.
Now, those reserves, the development of those reserves, when did that take place? Because has this been were these large reserves in place for a long time, or is this a recent development perhaps with government money that the town received during COVID?
Well, the ARPA money is separate. That was not included in reserves.
Okay.
So, we have that in a separate account. I couldn't tell you, I'm not gonna try and guess on how many years it took to build them up, but they are too high. And so I returned some. And then I managed our budget very carefully this year. There are things you can do, like asking questions about overtime. Why do certain things have to be done on overtime when it costs the taxpayers more? When you're careful, you can spend less money. And so at the end of this year, I'm projecting a surplus, even on my tax cut budget. And my budget that will be released tomorrow is going to include another tax cut.
What do you see as the what do you expect the surplus to be this year?
The surplus will still be at a range that will please the ratings agencies. We are not going to jeopardize our AAA bond rating. We did get the AAA bond rating again.
But I mean, in terms of amount, is it a large amount? Is it 50,000, 100,000, $1 million?
It's going to be just about 30% of the amount we spend of our budget.
Okay, there was another issue regarding salary that while he was town supervisor, John Kamen's salary was increased, or the town supervisor's salary was increased 33%. Is that, and I think we looked up what the town supervisor receives through See-Through New York, and we saw a number of about 135,000 for the supervisor. Is that correct?
That's about correct.
Do you think that if Kamen was wrong to increase his salary, which would indicate that it was and went up too high, do you think that you can reduce your salary and save taxpayers even more money?
I guess that's something I could have considered. I did not. I mean, the supervisor's salary has stayed the same, has been the same for quite a while. There has not been an increase. So that is not in our current budget. I suppose is something I could have considered, but I'll tell you, it's the supervisor's salary is quite a bit lower than a lot of the other salaries in the town.
Okay. Let me ask you just on a couple of quick things. Housing of migrants. People who are asylum seekers right now in New York City has a real challenge. It's got more than 110,000 people, 60,000 which are being sheltered. There's a problem with the immigration system, thanks to Congress, that these people legally they can come in if they qualify at seeking asylum, but they can't work for at least 6 months. And so there's a problem, and other areas, Nassau County, County Executive Blakeman rejected the idea of using Nassau Coliseum right now to house some. What's your feeling on the housing of migrants in Nassau County and the town of North Hempstead?
I think that Steve Ballone also rejected having migrants come into Suffolk County, correct?
Many of the
Right.
suburban communities and upstate communities have rejected it. Even though places like in upstate have lost large amounts of population. So what's your feeling in terms of accepting migrants into the town of North Hempstead or Nassau County?
Well, we don't have the place, we don't have the budget, we don't have the plan for them to be able to work. So it's it's not a good solution. As you said before, the solution has to be found by our federal representatives, because this involves people that came in from another country who are seeking asylum under our federal law. So the provision has to be made for them, by our federal representatives.
Should they then be just live on the street? Are we okay with them just, living on the street? And these are women and children, and it's mothers and fathers and kids.
Nobody wants to see that. We already have homeless people in Nassau County who we, and they are probably someone's families. So, maybe they went through a drug problem or a mental health problem. But we have not taken enough care of our own. We have hungry people in Nassau County. So I don't think that, we don't have the budget or the place or the ability for people to work. So until that is provided for, we're waiting for our federal representatives to help.
Okay. Congestion pricing. The city of New York and the MTA are about to implement congestion pricing. Hasn't been popular on Long Island. What's your feeling about the city implementing congestion pricing?
I think it still has a lot of problems. I think it's not ready. It seems to me that everybody has requested an exemption, whether they be, workers or veterans or law enforcement. I mean, there's so many people who have requested an exemption that there's not likely to be the revenue that was promised from it. And I have heard that they don't even have the technology in place to do it. So I think this was a solution that looked good up in the sky, but that it's not looking good in practicality.
I mean, there are other cities around the world, not in the United States, but around the world that are using it. If the technology is there, should New York be able to implement that? They view it as for an environmental reason, for overcrowding. I drove into New York City last night, and the traffic was blocked both ways. So, and I think you can almost many times, morning, evening, there is that congestion that doesn't, not just New York City, it starts somewhere around exit 39 on the Long Island Expressway.
So may I ask why you didn't take the train?
I was traveling with a group that included somebody who was my mother-in-law, who's 100 years old.
Oh my goodness. Wow. That is very nice. It's very nice that you went for a night in the city with your 100-year-old mother. No, I understand.
But I mean, people are doing it, and you're looking at traffic. And listen, I would do it in pay. If there was this occasion and they said, okay, I mean, given the amount that I paid for parking, it's just, and for the restaurant, I guess it's another expense, but I could have taken, if it was myself, I could have taken the train. But should New York City be allowed to do that? That you paid for the cost of coming in and whatever increasing traffic and increasing pollution. Should New York City be allowed to do that?
I think it's still got a lot of problems, and I think it will be too expensive. It will be a very high burden on some people. So, I think that the price is too high too. So, I mean, obviously we have to look at other cities. We could look at other cities and try and understand why was their rollout better. But it seems that this proposal is not ready.
One question, and I don't think it gets asked enough out here, and there are other people that would be in there. What about the congestion in Nassau County?
Mm-hmm.
as I said, that traffic doesn't start once you cross the Queensboro Bridge or go through the Midtown Tunnel. It starts out here, and all day you can go the main artery going east-west through the Long Island Expressway and the Northern State, and you're stuck in traffic oftentimes. What is, other than the train, which they have expanded, they've spent billions of dollars for the extending for the Grand Central, the getting that as a line, and also the third track.
Mhm.
What other than the train mass transit are the solution to the congestion problems that exist in Nassau County right now?
They built the HOV lanes on the LIE to try and encourage carpooling. It is obviously it's a problem. Some blame Robert Moses for the problem. Why didn't he build the train track in the middle of the highway when he was building the highway?
They
Would have
do it
been
in
nice.
Chicago. If you go to Chicago, they do have trains.
But this is one of the things people say when they argue against the additional housing that Governor Hochul wanted to impose on us, is that we already are stuck on highways all the time. We are a very dense county.
But that's the argument for transit-oriented housing, is the fact that you're going to attract people who are going to take the train into New York where they work.
Yeah.
And they're not going to be adding to the burden there. That would be the point. I mean, if you got a house right next to the train track, as a resident of Roslyn, I would take the train, but there's not a direct connection. There's like one a day from Roslyn. So if you want direct, you have to go to the Port Line and go to Manhasset. And they don't, and they've got 10 parking spots for people who don't live in Manhasset.
Something else that we have to consider before before investing money in a solution is that there are people who don't have to commute to the city anymore. I'll give you myself for an example. I work down the block from my house, and my husband now works from home, and we can walk to the train line. That's why we bought our house here 24 years ago. So we have to be aware of all of these these factors.
Now let me ask you this. This goes to, you just mentioned you're still a registered Democrat.
Mhm.
Why haven't you changed?
I don't think I should change.
The state Republican committee is certainly lending its support to you and your candidacy. I don't see anything from the Democratic committee. And why? And you're on the line for Republican as well as conservative. Why not change party affiliation?
I don't think I should have to. I don't feel that it's, I'm not sure if it's appropriate if I have held myself out as a person who wants to walk the center line and bring people together. I don't know if I should change it, because that is how I feel. I don't think that these issues that we face at the town level are Democrat and Republican issues. And so I don't feel that I need to change my registration.
Okay. Let me ask you a question that I've made it a policy to ask Republicans. Do you think Joe Biden won the 2020 election in a free and fair election?
I do.
Would you vote for, if Donald Trump was running for president again, if he wins the nomination, and it seems very likely that he will, and runs against Joe Biden, who do you plan on voting for?
I don't know who I will vote for yet. There was a debate last night. There will be maybe even more candidates. I would love to see some more candidates. So I don't know who I will vote for. I never, I have not been a fan of Donald Trump. I think he had a turn, and people didn't want him to have a second term.
Well, right now, the Republican Party seems, and you're running, at least the people you're running with are there. You may not be the Democrat, but you are running as a Republican. He's very likely to be the person who's going to do it. So if it comes down, would you vote for Donald Trump?
I hope he's not the candidate. I don't think that he will. I don't think that he will succeed. But I think that you have to vote for the best candidate. I would not be restricted in who I voted for. I'll vote for the best candidate.
Okay. I mean, just this week, there were two things. One, the president said he would, if reelected, he would investigate NBC and MSNBC and other Main Street media who don't cover him fairly. Obviously, we have
President Biden said this?
No, this is former President Trump tweeted, or he didn't tweet, it was on his social media company. And he also said that General Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who had met with his Chinese counterpart following the insurrection, that in an earlier age, the penalty would have been death for what he had done. Could you still vote for Donald Trump, who holds these views?
These things sound silly.
Um,
They would not make me more likely to vote for Donald Trump.
Well, silly is one word, scary is another. If you're a media company or you're General Milley, him just saying this, he's got security. There are enough people out there that are not going to think it's silly, and they're going to take it as marching orders.
I understand what you mean. No, it's not silly, but I certainly don't think that's good.
Now, you endorsed George Santos for Congress, and you campaigned with him. And you were quoted as saying, I see this is on campaign literature, but the good news is that it was, they quote our website. So we always appreciative of that.
Yes.
That George is a friend and true leader. And I guess, my question is, on what basis did you come to that conclusion?
Well, I believed the things that he told me. I believed that he was a successful investment banker and that he owned property and that he knew a lot about tax relief. I believed those things, and those things made me think that he was a good candidate. Obviously, I was wrong. I was lied to, along with everyone else. We all were lied to. I was a victim. We all were. So I was wrong. When he certainly was not a friend.
But I guess
he lied to me.
And this isn't you. I mean, the Republican Party did this not once, but they've done it twice, where they nominated him. But and newspapers were criticized for this as well, for not finding him out. But what kind of due diligence did you do in doing it, or did you accept the word of the Nassau County Republican Committee? Or
I also accepted the Democratic opponents who were running against him, and these people were running for Congress. So I assumed that they had done opposition research. I mean, when someone's running for Congress, you assume that they have been investigated, and by the opponents as well. So I did assume that. I did not have the resources to do vetting. I would have thought that some of this about his history would have come out in a debate. He did have debates, and I'm not sure why it wasn't mentioned at that time. Why did everybody wait until after the election when there was nothing we could do about it?
Okay, fair enough.
But when I did find out, I called for him to resign. I called on Congress to expel him. I spoke to CNN. I spoke to the Washington Post. I was very firm in wanting him gone and not dealing with him. I've had no dealings with him. And, I'm going to contrast that with my opponent, who still, even after, his political friend Gerard Terry was convicted of tax fraud, still asked the judge for leniency for him.
Okay. You have also have I don't know what the process was. You have the Conservative Party nomination. You're running on that line, as is every Republican. In the past, Delia Durigi-Whitten and Josh Lafazan have run as Democrats, and this year it's conservative across the board. What was the process for that?
That's above my, what the county party leaders do is above my pay grade.
But then you speak to, was this something that was set up by Joe Cairo, or did you have to go and, apply or, go before the Nassau County or New York State Conservative Party and talk to them?
Well, I have come to know the leader of the Nassau Conservative Party, Dan Donovan, over the past 2 years. He's seen my work. I've seen him at events. I believe that since I'm a registered Democrat, they still had to sign a letter saying that even though I'm not a member, affiliated with the party, that they still have nominated me.
Okay. Going to the website, at least of the New York State Conservative Party, they list their 2023 legislative priorities. And I guess, have you looked at that? Do you know what they are, kind of the party you're representing? Are you aware of their positions?
What positions are you asking about?
Well, they have a lengthy list of things. They plan on being busy.
Let me just say that, I imagine.
Let me give you.
Okay, I'm going to guess that these are not town issues. I mean, not very, very few of the things that are on the party platforms, deal with the town. So they're not things that I need to, address. I'm not advocating for or against. They just have nothing to do with being the town supervisor.
Okay, but they're saying district attorneys who do not uphold their responsibilities to prosecute criminals who have broken laws must be removed from office immediately. Let me give you a couple. No law shall be enacted to overturn the fact that voters overwhelmingly rejected same-day voter registration, had no excuse absentee voting. Their opposition to second passage of the Equal Rights Amendment. They oppose any effort to reverse the Supreme Court's decision to allow concealed carry in New York. Tax dollars should not be used to prevent or end a pregnancy, nor should they be used for non-residents to travel to New York. Prevent means contraception. They're against assisted suicide, term limits. They're in favor of profiling, surveillance, and stop and frisk. And they want parents to have the right to have full access to their school's curriculum and source materials before they're presented to students. Are these policies that you are comfortable with?
These are not policies that relate to being the town supervisor. New York law is settled on a lot of these issues. I am an attorney. I understand New York state law. So, these are, I am not advocating for, things other than taxpayer relief and safe parks and a functioning building department.
But if you're carrying, then why accept that party's endorsement
Mhm.
if they don't represent who you are, or what they're proposing is not something that you support?
Well, I mean, they chose me. I'm grateful that they chose me. They think I'm the better candidate for town supervisor. Some of these issues, I don't think they believe them to be within the purview of the town supervisor. So, I'm glad that they support me again. I think I've done a good job, and I want to keep doing what I'm doing.
Okay. Let me thank you for, and I will say this. People can look forward to my next editorial. This is on this subject, so I'll give you points for this. We're seeing that. I appreciate you taking the time and answering the questions, because what we're seeing, and I've spoken to other people, other organizations that try to get candidates, and they have said they have found it more difficult to get candidates. I found it more difficult with Republicans to do that, to sit down and answer questions for whatever reason. I tell them, if I'm part of the biased lamestream media, I got it on YouTube, so you can have it's there for everyone to see. So I do appreciate and thank you for taking the time and doing that. And with that, you get to answer the easiest question, hopefully for you,
Okay.
which is why.
Before you ask me the question, I want to thank you, because we really need local press. And that with some of the, challenges I've faced on the town board, I rely on the local press to let the public know. It's very important. So I am in favor of participating in these forums, because I think the public needs to have as much information as possible. So,
Okay.
so I thank you. Now go ahead with the question.
Okay. And so here's your payoff for that.
Okay.
Why should voters select you over John Kamen as the next town supervisor?
Well, I am committed to the job. I have worked very hard during my term to get to know all the people of the town of North Hempstead. It's a very diverse town. I've been in the temples, in the mosques, in the Korean temples, the pride parades. We have so much going on, and I'm fortunate that we're in a post shutdown world where we've had so much. So I've enjoyed getting to know the people. I believe I have been a good representative of the people, and I want to continue working in a bipartisan way for tax relief. I think that the residents' biggest concern is costs going up, and will they be able to stay in their homes? So I very much want to keep this job. I live down the block from Town Hall. My children are now in college. I'm devoted to this. My opponent had a turn at this job years ago. He does have a record of tax increases, which we have been reminding people about since he has been working in Suffolk County. But his recent record is running for Congress. He has had 2 runs for Congress, and now this is his second campaign running for supervisor, while he's in Suffolk County. So I'm troubled that he didn't really want this job. Even earlier this year, he called it looking backwards. So I hope that people will choose me, because I am dedicated. I have delivered on what I wanted to do. I want to do more. And so I hope that people will remember that local elections have a big impact on their neighborhood, and they are decided by small margins. So every vote counts. And I'd be very grateful for support to have another 2-year term as North Hempstead Town Supervisor.
Okay, I'd like to again thank Supervisor Jennifer DeSena for taking the time, sharing her views. I'd like to also thank Northwell Health for sponsoring today's discussion. A recording of today's discussion can be found on the islandnow360.com website and our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. You'll be able to get to the YouTube channel directly by clicking on a link on the island360.com. And a story about today's interview will appear in the 6 Blank Slate Media newspapers next week. My thanks again for Supervisor DeSena for sitting down with us and sharing